Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Turn it up. Glenn, turn it up. And Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Ashtotar the Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Ashtotar the Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Kwantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bandreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 28th day of October, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 4, entitled The Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter 27, Attack by Chandabega on the city of King Puranjan, the character of Kalakanya. Text number 18. Saheva Puryam Madhubhuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balingrinhan Strijito Naividantayam Saheva Puryam Madhubhuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanditam Balingrinnan Strijito Navidanbayam Saheva Puryam Rubhuk Panchaleshu Swaparshadai Upanditam Balingrinnan Strijito Navidanbayam Saheva Puryam Madhubhuk Panchaleshu Swaparshadai Innan Trijito Navidanmayam Puryam Madhubhuk Panchaleshu Swaparshadai Upanitam Balim Strijito Navidadbhayam Saheva Puryam Madhubhuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balim Grinnan Strijito Navidadbhayam Saha He Eva Certainly Puryam Within the city Madhubhuk, enjoying sex life. Panchaleshu, in the kingdom of Panchala, 5 sense objects. Saparshadai, along with his followers. Upanitam, brought. Balim, taxes. Grinnan, accepting. Strijitaha, conquered by women. Na, did not. Avidat, understand. Bhayam, fear of death. Translation. King Puranjan collected taxes in the city known as Panchala, and thus was able to engage in sexual indulgence. Being completely under the control of women, he could not understand that his life was passing away and that he was reaching the point of death. Purport. Government men, including kings, presidents, secretaries, and ministers, are in a position to utilize taxes collected from the citizens for sense gratification. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that in this Kali Yuga, government men, Rajanyas, and those connected with the government, as well as exalted government ministers, secretaries, and presidents, will all simply collect taxes for sense gratification. The government is top-heavy, and without increasing taxes, the government cannot maintain itself. When taxes are collected, they are utilized for the sense gratification of the government officials. Such irresponsible politicians forget that there is a time when death will come to take away all their sense gratification. Some of them are convinced that after life, everything is finished. This atheistic theory was conceived long ago by a philosopher called Charvak. Charvak recommended that man should live very opulently by either begging, borrowing, or stealing. He also maintained that one should not be afraid of death, the next life, the past life, or an impious life, because after the body is burnt to ashes, everything is finished. This is the philosophy of those who are too much materially addicted. Such philosophizing will not save one from the danger of death, nor will it save one from an abominable afterlife. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I couldn't help thinking when I was reading this purport and these verses of the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna describes that mentality. I'm going to read a few verses here from there. Of course, this chapter is called the Divine and Demoniac. In the first 3 verses, he describes many characteristics, I think 26 or 28 qualities of that are divine. And they're very close to the devotional qualities that we try to cultivate. But then he talks about the demonic qualities. And especially, this section here where he says, taking shelter of insatiable lust. First of all, he talks about the conclusion. In other words, to try to enjoy unlimitedly in this world, you have to block out all the philosophy and the idea that there's something to pay for that there's something called sin, and that you'll suffer for all of these things. This is exactly the message that Narada Muni is trying to impress on King Prachanabarhisha. That in your effort to go to the heavenly planets and all this slaughter that you're doing of these poor animals and not really following the Vedic injunctions, you're going to be anything else but happy after you leave this body. It's not you're going. It's a very dangerous situation. So, but the out and out demons. Now, it's interesting. I think this is something maybe we can discuss, because recently I did another Zoom class on the fall and the redemption of the soul, and of course the idea is that you fall from the spiritual world, and then you can fall all the way to this demonic mentality. And as Krishna says at the end of this chapter, I perpetually, not eternally, but perpetually, means a very, very, very long time beyond calculation, put them into suffering, into demonic species of life and hellish planets we read about in the 5th canto. So Puranjan, of course it's an allegory, but Puranjan was very sinful. I mean, he had, he was just trying to enjoy senses, do all these things. But yet, when he gets reborn, he gets reborn as a woman, but he gets married to a devotee, and then he eventually meets the super soul. And so it's not exactly the scenario Krishna described, but be that as it may, the standard practice for actual demons is that they do very much what's like being described here. They say the world is unreal with no foundation, no God in control. This is Charvak. In other words, you're so much immersed in this sense gratification and exploiting others and committing all kinds of vicious activities that completely covers your knowledge, because this lust covers the knowledge. And you come up with these philosophies. There's no God in control. There's no life after death. There's nothing to pay. Simply grab whatever you can and join with other demons in the association of demons. So following such conclusion, the demoniac, who are lost to themselves and have no intelligence, engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. Now this ties in with Prabhupada's purport, where he talks about the government officials and everyone exacting taxes in order to enjoy. So throughout this modern world, practically this is what government means. In every case, there's this whole hidden part of the government where they're just exploiting. There's all kinds of corruption, and sometimes when they don't feel that there's a problem with that they'll be caught up on it, then they go to foreign lands, and they just exploit the people mercilessly. Murder and terrorism comes mostly from the government. And so this is happening in today's world. There are various levels of it, but it's corruption throughout. So, taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. They believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Now, if you go outside and ask 100 people, they're going to basically say the same thing. They may have different levels of doing that. Yes, I'm sacrificing for my children, but it all boils down to that they'll be comfortable and happy in a material sense, satisfying the senses. That's the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Why is the anxiety immeasurable? Because it's impossible to actually fulfill that desire. There's always it's just like Prabhupada described, I heard a lecture recently, the ass, the donkey, who's employed. You've seen in India, you go to Vrindavan, these poor donkeys have to carry the Dhobi's clothes. Dhobi is the laundroman. Oh, as much as he can possibly pile onto the back there so they can barely walk, he's going for. But he's got him trained, so he thinks, well, I've got to do this service because and he'll feed me. And Prabhupada points out there's grass everywhere, but he's got him brainwashed to think that I have to get my grass from this dope, like that. And so this is the anxiety is immeasurable because it can never be fulfilled. There's this idea of the will-o'-the-wisp, something that's in the forest that's drawing you on, some shining object. It's like the will-o'-the-wisp. You never really find it. Or the mirage, the mirage of happiness in the material world. It looks good, you hear about it, it sounds good. You may even know people who are apparently enjoying in that way, and you strive for it, but when you actually get it, it's not what you thought, and it soon goes away. It's soon fleeting. Your ability to enjoy it goes away, or it's taken away, and this produces what Prahlad Maharaj calls the fire of anxiety, the fire of anguish in this world, constantly burning. So, but then Krishna gets into the mind of the demon, and he actually talks like a demon. Isharoham, aham bogi, siddhoham balavan sukhi. That's their mantra. So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. Now, don't you think that these billionaires had to be in that mentality at one point? I mean, that's it, and they were still in it. It's never enough, never enough. The billionaires, multi-billionaires, they're getting rich off of this pandemic. You can imagine Amazon. Amazon already, it's a convenient thing. You buy through but now everybody has to buy through there. So $10 billion in 1 month he made. It's obscene, but that's exactly the mentality. So much of mine now, and will increase in the future. He's my enemy, and I've killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. We have that so graphically described in the Bhagavatam with Kamsa and Aranyakashipu, So, I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There's none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. So why should he perform sacrifices? Just to look good. Right? This is the quality of dambha. Really dambha. It's false pride, and it's hypocritically, especially performing sacrifices. I researched this word in the dictionary, It's specially used when someone wants to look religious and perform, just for show. And that's exactly what Krishna is describing here. I'll give a little charity, or better yet, I'll set up a fake charity, get the money, and use the money for myself. That's another thing that they do. In this way, they're deluded by ignorance, perplexed by various anxieties, because of course you're creating all kinds of enemies while you do this, and you're never quite sure if you've got them conquered, so you have to go here, there. You can imagine the anxiety of that. Self-complacent, so they become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell. So it's kind of what's being described here, but with Puranjan. So many, too much attracted to sex life, and then you have all of the children that you have to worry about and get them married, and then the dynasty and there's all enemies. And bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger. Bewildered means that all of this is obviously manifestations of the modes of nature, covers your real intelligence. This is a very important point. It's the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita that's described. And anyone who tries, to spread Krishna consciousness, you meet people like that. They're just not receptive. They even become angry if you talk to them. That this is the real sign of a demon. That when you try to instruct them, they become angry. Whereas a saintly person is very, very happy to get some instruction from a saint, and eager to receive it. So they become envious of the Supreme Lord Himself, situated in their own bodies, and blaspheme against the real religion. So this is, and then they attain repeating birth among species of demonic life, and so they go down. And then the last, and I won't go over it again, I've been through these verses, but there's these 4 verses at the end of this chapter, which kind of sum up the whole lesson. There are 3 gates leading to hell. Who remembers what they are? Yeah, lust, anger, and greed. Lust breeds greed, and when lust is unsatisfied, the anger comes. So he said, these are 3 gates leading to hell. Every sane man human being, should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. But how to give them up? That's the question. That's the process of Bhakti Yoga. The person who has escaped these three gates of hell performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. So what is he describing there? 4 regular principles, right? And the process of bhakti. If you're fortunate enough to take that discipline up, then these things diminish. They're no longer affecting you as much. And the more sincere you are, the more you get free from those three. What are we enjoying to be? Live as simply as possible, right? Well, that directly contradicts the greed aspect and the lust aspect. And as soon as those two are gone, then the anger can, what do you have to be angry about? Only if someone attacks the devotee or the deity, then you should be angry, Otherwise, your material desires are diminishing and minimized, and therefore your sense of frustration of not having them fulfilled is being destroyed. You see how Bhakti Yoga directly clears away these anarthas, these abhadras. So, but one who discards scriptural injunctions, he brings in this very important aspect of the Shastra. Where are we going to know? How are we going to know how to practice this? Where's the foundation of our faith? That's the revealed scripture. You say, well, okay, there's 3, Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. There's the spiritual master, and the scripture, and the saintly devotees, who are Shiksha Gurus, But the foundation of the whole thing is Shastra. The definition of Acharya is one who knows the Shastra, lives by it, and teaches. Those 3 things. And Prabhupada perfectly personified that. So the Shastra is the foundation. And here, so Krishna says, one who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims. And this is what everyone, it's not that they even discard scripture, they have no idea. They've come to the point where there's not even something to discard. They even know the existence of it. Therefore, that's our task, is to introduce them to it. That's why the books are so important, both to study and to distribute. They go hand in hand, because that it renews our faith and our understanding, and our we have so much information about how to practice, and enlivens us to give it to others, because we're benefiting. If you're practicing nicely, you're benefiting from the practice. Your faith is being confirmed, day by day, until you get to the point of the nishtha. Nishtha is that Shraddha defined by Lord Chaitanya. Shraddha shabde vishwas kohe sudridha nishtroy Krishna bhakti kole sarva karma katohoy. Real Shraddha is defined as the unshakable firm conviction that just by practicing the principles of devotional service, all my aspirations will be fulfilled. You see how that's exactly 100 degrees different than the demonic mentality. There's no God, there's no scripture, And what are the aspirations? What does that say? Asha pasha shatai bodha. His heart is bound by thousands and thousands of ropes. Asha pasha, it's a wonderful phrase. The ropes of hope or aspiration for material, which are never to be fulfilled. But those ropes themselves bind you to this world and bring you back birth after birth. This is the famous Hridaya Granthi, the knots in the heart, aspiration. So, but the warning here is one who discards them, and this is directly, pertinent for us, because one can always discard. You have free will. The discard scriptural injunction, acts according to his own whims, attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. No siddhi, no sukha, and no ultimate place. Therefore, the final verse of this chapter is so important. Therefore, one should therefore understand what is duty, what is not duty, by the regulations of the scriptures. What duty and not duty means what is to be done and what is to not to be done. Yeah. What does he say? Tasmat chastram pramanam te karya vibhastito. Karya means what your duty is, what you should do, and akarya means what you shouldn't do. So you understand by the regulations of the scriptures, the vidhi, shastra vidhi. Now, understanding is not enough. And knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. So accepting that sense of duty, because at the beginning stage, it's not all spontaneous. We have to do things that we don't want to do. But that's what duty means. Accept it, yes. I understand this is to my greatest benefit. It's what my spiritual master wants. It's what the Shastra says. I'm going to do it anyway. And that's a very important step. And conversely, giving up those things that we really want to do, that we're habituated to do, but we know are bad for us. We've been reading, and we know it's what the Shastra wants, what the Guru wants. So you do that. That anukul yasya sankalpa, pratikul yasya varjanam. That's two first aspects of surrender. So back to Puranjan, he was the epitome of acting according to his whims. There's no mention here that there was some sage or something. Of course, it's an allegory, preaching to him. He just was the exemplar of the conditioned soul, entrapped in this material life. And so now the stage has arrived when Chandabhega, time, which moves inevitably, is taking its toll. And basically is breaking down the body. It's being attacked by the days and nights, and his life air is getting weaker. It's inevitable. The whole material body, every material body, including human beings, it's just an amazing machine when you think about it. The fact of this material body, what to speak of all the others that we see around us into the whole universe, is itself a very strong argument for the existence of God. There's two possibilities. One, that there's a great intelligence that engineered this body, and it's obviously a complex machine. You don't have to be a great scientist to see that. Or that it somehow evolved by chance over millions and billions and trillions of years just by chemicals coming together. So which is more likely? They say that we believe in in mythology and things, but it's absolutely absurd. And when you think about it, isn't that what's basically taught in the universities? When you get right down to it, you may find all these details of the chemicals and how they're working, and you're in that mindset. Wow, it's amazing how it eventually came to human beings. But the whole premise of it is absurd. Prabhupada would always argue about that. Use that argument, which is also one I think Thomas Aquinas used. The argument from design, the argument for the existence of God from the design, not just living things, but the whole universe. What's that story? I think Prabhupada mentioned this one, where Isaac Newton, such a great scientist, he was into the solar system, right? So he had a solar system made, a little machine with gears and everything, and there's the planets that they knew about at that time. And a friend came in, and he was working with it. Says, "Oh, who made that?" He says, "It just came. It just existed. Nobody made it. I didn't make it." So the friend was scoffing. "Come on, well, why do you think that this little model, which is a very imperfect facsimile of the real thing, must have a creator, but the real thing doesn't have a creator?" His friend was an atheist. You got a point there. It's a great analogy, But assuming that one is intelligent enough to think, there must be a big brain or intelligence creating all the things, then the next question is, how can I find out more? Where do I fit in? And those questions are being asked, by very thoughtful persons. Prabhupada, in his very first purport in the Bhagavatam 111, he talks about how the intelligent person looks up into the sky and at night, and he sees all those stars, and he wonders, wow, where did all this come from? Who created it? Where do I fit in? These kind of natural questions one may ask. But if you've been miseducated to think that it's all simply by chance or, like that, then you're looking through, you're seeing this world, yourself, the stars, through that lens. You know how we have this Premanjana Chudita Bhakti Vilochanena? The verse about how you see God, the great souls who are purified, who have anointed their eyes with the salve of love of God, of prema, they see Shama Sundar within the heart at every moment. And they also see, sometimes they said they see the pastimes of the Lord being enacted everywhere. In other words, by purification of your intelligence and your consciousness, all the senses work differently. You're seeing Krishna working everywhere. The fragrance of the earth, you smell. Oh, that's Krishna. That's the whole idea. So, but someone who has had just the opposite kind of training, and he's heard from childhood about there's no God, and it's all simply a big machine that's working automatically. Then you'll see the world with that vision, and you'll propagate it. Andaya tandaya rupa niyamana, Prahlad says, the blind leading the blind. And so that's what Prabhupada came to dispel. That how the sun, the Bhagavatam has risen just like the sun to dispel the ignorance of people in this age. And if you're open to it, if you allow it shine into your heart and your mind and your intelligence, then it'll be revelation. It'll be ecstatic. You'll see things differently. You'll see yourself differently. And there's some hope. Not some hope for sense gratification, but for hope for the ultimate exaltation of the soul, this nikshayasa, or the shreya, the ultimate good, breaking out of this round of birth and death. What's the most amazing thing? You know the answer, Vijay. What's the most amazing thing in this world?
People are dying everywhere.
Well, I listen to these lectures all the time, right? And he's giving this one because I'm listening now to the Jamil lectures, the first part of the 6th canto, and so. Jamil, before he chanted that name Narayan, he had been covered over, but he had good fortune, of naming his son Narayan. Of course, he called it out Narayan, and then the Vishnudutas come and save him. He gets a second chance, title of the book, and then he goes off to the Himalayas and becomes realized. But within those lectures, Prabhupada is saying, it's the most amazing thing. Ahanyahani bhutani gachanti himalayam sheshak stavanam ichanti kimascharma takparam. Day by day, thousands and thousands and millions of human beings are being dying and being dragged off to Yamaraj for judgment, Himalayam. But those who are left are saying, oh, that's not going to happen to me. In other words, they still are planning as if death isn't going to happen. They're living on that basis. It doesn't enter the brain that this is, going to happen to me. Is there life after death? Is there some way, to solve the problem? Materially, there's no way to solve the problem. And so the answer to most people is stick your head in the sand, as if this is not going to happen to me. That's why it's the most amazing thing. The ostrich, the lion's coming, he's doomed. I got the solution. Put my head in the sand. Oh, I'm good. I got another 10 seconds. That's exactly the whole civilization. Modern civilization is in that. Denying. And then material energy eventually, comes down like a ton of bricks, as it is right now. And even individually, everybody goes through it. You got all these plans, you got your relationships, you got your money and everything like that. But old age, and the Kala Kanya, the daughter of old age, which is disease, I think, isn't it? Inevitably, old age, disease, and death, right? So when that happens, suddenly it's like, what happened? I was doing okay. But now this isn't working like it used to. I can't do what I used to do. Okay, I'm going to go to the doctor. There's some way I can solve it that way, right? There's all of these attempts. I think I mentioned to you, now they know how old you are, because, they sell that information. So I always get in my inbox, this junk mail. And they know some flash, some email. The doctors they've discovered a way that you can reverse aging, Well, let me click on that one. That sounds like... It's not going to, for a 24-year-old, it's not going to get that in his inbox, but a 72-year-old, oh yeah, we got him, Oh, of course I laugh, But that covers your intelligence. I don't have to inquire into, what I really need to do, what's going to happen after death, so I can get it, eternal life that way. No, we know that's a myth, But this new medicine that they discovered in Russia, that maybe helped me to live, more usefully. So this is the fire of material life is burning. And they're philosophers, just like Charvak Muni. Probably didn't use the Muni here, but that's what he said that one should live very often by either begging, borrowing, or stealing. What he doesn't mention here is, what do you do with that money? You remember? Ghee. You buy ghee. That's the source of pleasure. You know, if I can only have something cooked in ghee, everything, you know, my life will be perfect. So you're begging, borrowing. But how about the people who you beg from and don't pay back, and you borrow from and don't pay back, you know, and steal from? Then you got that karma coming at you. You know, that's another. So it's clearly a fool's errand, you know. And we're so fortunate. I mean, people are living in today, you know, with the internet. It's really an utter disaster, because you can find whatever you want to believe on there, and it's somebody else. And before you know it, you got a whole worldview developed, you know, that's completely false, you know. And you're propagating it, and you're living according to it, and collecting money on the basis of it. And there's thousands of them. They're all false, you know. I mean, there's the basic falsity that Maya teaches you. Everybody's bewildered by it, you know. That somehow you are the body, you could enjoy the senses and live happily ever after. Remember the happily ever after? You know, all those fairy tales we used to hear before we took rest, you know, because you have to encourage the kid. Everything's going to be okay, you know. But it's not going to be okay, you know. You're going to get older, and all your dreams are going to be shattered. So, this is Charvak. So Prabhupada's point is, this philosophy has always been there. In other words, it's not something new. This atheism and hedonism are new, are always there. So Krishna consciousness process, the process of Bhakti Yoga, as given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very quickly dispels that. And because the wonderful thing about it is that the process itself, even if you haven't even opened the book, if you're able to at least come into the kirtan and you're chanting and you meet a devotee, it's a whole other channel of reality. And if you take it seriously, you will inevitably experience a joy that has nothing to do really with sense gratification. It has to do with your contacting Krishna and pleasing him. Just by coming in and chanting a little bit, that's pleasing the Krishna. Here's another soul who has a chance, you know. And so you get a little dollop of bliss, you know, and you get a lot of dollops of prasadam, you know, which should definitely bring you back if you to the temple. And so it opens up this channel of reality, the reality. And we have to have full faith in that this is actually reality. And we're living in a world of grand illusion. And it's just like that idea of the mirage, you know. But the mirage is very highly developed. I mean, we may have all experienced mirages driving on a hot, you know, in little desert area. You can see, it looks like there's water there, but there's no water, you know. But the fools who don't know that, the example I think it's Akrura's in Akrura's prayers, chapter 40 of the 10th canto. He's describing himself. You know, he's a great devotee, but he's describing himself as a conditioned soul. Anityanatma dukkeshu vipari matiyaham dvandvaramos tamo vishto najare tvatmanak priyam. He says, being bewildered in Maya, I've taken that which is temporary to be permanent, you know, my body and everything relates to it, and that which is not me to be me, my body, and that which is sources of misery to be sources of pleasure. This is the key. Dukkeshu viparya, reversed. Everything's reversed. Instead of being a servant of Krishna, I'm being his competitor and so forth. Viparya materiyaham. And in this situation, dvandvaramo, I'm trying to enjoy the dualities of this material world. And entering tamo vishto, more and more into darkness and illusion. And the greatest tragedy of all, my Lord, he's praying to Krishna standing in the Yamuna as he's taking Krishna and Balaram to Mathura. They're sitting in the chariot and he's in the river. And he sees them manifested. There's Vishnu on Shesha, and this is Krishna and Balaram. So he has all these prayers. This is one of like 4 or 5 set of prayers that he has. And he says, Najane tvatmanak priyam, and I've completely forgotten that you're my dearest master, my dearest friend. I am just like Yatabodo Jalam Hitta Padichandam Tadudbhavai Abeti Magatushnam Vai Tata, I forget the last line. So he's saying that I'm just like a foolish animal or a foolish person who's standing at the edge of an oasis in the desert, and right next to him, he's very thirsty, and right next to him is a pool that's been overgrown by grass and things like that. So he can't see the pool, but he looks out in the desert. Oh, there's a nice little pond. I see, and you run out there. In a similar way, forgetting you in my heart, I've been running out through the senses trying to enjoy this mirage of material happiness. And so, in this state, he says, I forget the last verse, but he says, therefore, my only solution is to throw myself at your lotus feet. I'm so unqualified, and beg that you'll take me even in this fallen condition. This is a devotional sentiment, very important. But that's the way everyone is. The phantasmagoria, perfect word, probably, the phantasmagoria of the material world, and means that it's very enticing and enchanting and absorbing. All of these lights, and it means the senses have their sense objects that you can try to enjoy. And sure enough, if you get it just right, you do enjoy, but then it's over. And so you have the memory. You try to get it again, and you do it, and you meet with others who try to enjoy in the same way, and you got it made, And then, the sex life, that's a big one. And so, okay, now I have my wife, okay, now I got it together. And it never comes to the point of real peace and happiness. There's always something threatening or actually destroying it. And the basic thing that destroys it, as we're hearing here, is just the passage of time. Because the whole thing is keyed on this little machine of the body, which must break down, and especially when there's no dharma, it's all just a question of, like I said, marriage is practically unknown. It's just a question of coming together for sense gratification, and as soon as that's over or damaged, then it splits up, which creates tremendous emotional problems for the partners as well as the children that came out of that, and you can be scarred for life. With all of this craziness going on. And so, oh no, I'm hurting so much. Oh, there's a pill I can take, that'll relieve my anxiety. So you start taking the pill, but never. The whole thing is a big spiral downward, which is what. So that's why we're praying, and when we chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada said, we're praying, please engage me in your service again. That's please lift me up and place me again at your lotus feet, and because that service, rather than serving these senses, serving this mind, serving our illusions, that is fulfilling. That is actually purifying, and it's our eternal dharma. That's what we are originally, servants of Krishna, and He can perfectly reciprocate with every one of us, whereas our senses can't. The senses become sources of pain rather than pleasure. But serving Krishna, absorbing the mind in Krishna and serving Him and developing our original relation with Him, that's a platform of eternal happiness, and this whole concept of ever increasing, which is practically inconceivable to me. It's so blissful, but it's ever increasing. Unheard of in the material sphere. It's ever decreasing. There's maybe a little, taste of happiness. We call it bliss. But inevitably it declines, and the misery that comes, the sex life. Yeah, but what about the STDs? What about all the hassle of trying to support those kids, and everything that comes with it? There's so much that comes after, and that really should convince us that that's not the way to go. So. This is the philosophy of those who are too much materially addicted. He's referring to charvak, hedonism. Such philosophizing will not save one from the danger of death, nor will it save one from an abominable afterlife. So it's like an either-or situation. We're given again and again, just like the end of that 16th chapter, right? If you can escape those 3 gates to hell by the process of bhakti, was it Trivadham Nadakasedam, Dwaram Nashanam, Kama Korta Lobas, Tasmarita Trayam Tajait. And one who has escaped them, then he goes back to Godhead. But on the other hand, if you keep acting according to your whims, Shastra Vidya Mutsraja, rejecting Shastra Vidya, the instructions of Shastra, then you'll never be happy, you'll never get perfection, you'll never go to the supreme goal. So we have to ask the question, if we believe in Krishna, do we want to be happy eternally? Do we want perfection in life? And do we want the supreme goal? And if we say yes, then follow the Shastra, and control the senses, engage them in Krishna's service, and then the senses actually can become real sources of happiness. There's a verse in the 87th chapter, 10th canto. I won't give you the whole verse, it's real long. But he's saying this human body is perfectly suited for serving the Lord, And when you actually serve Krishna with the senses and everything in your body, then the body actually becomes your best friend, because it's it's your paraphernalia for serving. Just like all this paraphernalia we have for serving the deity. Well, we wash it nicely, polish it, store it nicely, because it's important. It helps us serve Krishna. And on your side, my Lord, as a super soul, you're guiding, and you're recognized as the best friend of the soul, and everything is nice on the way back to Godhead. But on the other hand, those who don't take their pleasure in serving you, they worship the impermanent, mammon, asadupasane atmahano, and thus they commit spiritual suicide, atmahano. And what's their fate? They wander through all kinds of fearful bodies, trying to fulfill the desires and become covered by darkness. And the last verse of the verse is alas. This verse is alas. It's happening. So that's our choice. And every time we attend class, it kind of comes up. These classes are meant to give us knowledge and to give us faith and increase our determination to practice devotional service, because the modes are really thick out there. And we're living in a world that is diametrically opposed to the teachings of Bhagavatam, basically. And the influence is so powerful. They have so many ways in which they can try to bewilder you. But if we're firmly fixed and we're chanting nicely and really praying strongly, then we'll be protected. Krishna will protect us from Maya's implications. Otherwise, as Krishna says in the 2nd chapter, which we're just reading, even one of the senses that the mind fixes on can be like a very powerful wind dragging away the boat of the mind. And then we're adrift again in Maya's kingdom. Okay, I'm going to read this translation again. This is text 18. King Puranjan collected taxes in the city known as Panchala, and thus was able to engage in sexual indulgence. Being completely under the control of women, he could not understand that his life was passing away and that he was reaching the point of death. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful class. You said early on in the class, maybe it could be discussed. You said there seems to be a disconnect between the result he got being a wife, born as a woman and a wife of a devotee, and how generally the demoniac become perpetually cast down. So a perspective that I understand might reconcile it for you. In the beginning, when we were hearing about his characteristics, when Narada Muni first comes on the scene, he says, please see in the sky, those animals which you've sacrificed, without compassion, without mercy in the sacrificial arena. And in the very beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, because animal sacrifice is recommended in the Vedas, there are animal sacrifices in almost all religious rituals. However, one should not be satisfied simply by killing animals according to the directions of the scriptures. And then he goes on to lead us to Bhakti. And then if you go to the chapter where he goes to the forest to hunt, it says one day he developed the desire. I don't want to take the time to look it up. It'd take 30 seconds or whatever. But he developed the desire to go hunting, being overwhelmed by a demoniac desire. So animals are being killed in the forest. That's a big point made, that indiscriminately, without mercy, he just killed innocent animals that shouldn't have been target practice. And merciful people were like aghast with this sinful activity he did. But my understanding that would reconcile your question is that his life primarily was absorbed in doing the karma kanda of offering animals in sacrifices. And we know if you do any discrepancies, you got to pay the price. Or, I'll kill you now,
Yeah.
killing. So
Manksha.
there were a lot of animals waiting in line, but my understanding would be most of them were killed according to Karma Kanda, and you have to have Sukriti to get the association of devotee. So I would say that his Sukriti was developed by doing all the Karma Kanda. He gets born as a human again, and then plus gets married to a devotee. But obviously, you don't, how would you say, good and bad are lined up, and only the bhakti will deliver you or save you, not masucha. Don't worry if you take that path. So that's a little bit different understanding than what you were saying. Reconcile it for you.
I'm going to get into it and look at some of the commentators and probably see if we can figure it out. I mean, one of the things is, it is after all an allegory. And the result of it all is that he wants King Pratanaparshat to take up pure bhakti, and so that's what happens to Puranjan eventually, is that and there's a wonderful section which I referred to in my class where Prabhupada is talking. Well, this is how the soul falls from the spiritual world, because the Brahman there, who's actually the super soul, says, "Don't you remember? We were together in a place, and then you left that place like that." So. But thank you for that. That's an interesting angle to it. Oh, we got a questioner over here. Prakash.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Do me a favor. Yeah, there you go.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Very nice class.
Prabhu's mercy.
Prabhu, in what case, like for example, King Puranjan, he's dharmic, right? Or like even though he's involved in mostly in sense gratification, do we consider it under the Vedic paradigm he's dharmic?
Well, my understanding is, if you're actually following carefully, then you're not committing a sin there. That these animals are given another life, But if they're waiting for their revenge, he's neglecting something there. There's some discrepancies, and so as he's getting more and more entangled, and Narada has come to save him from this. Not just the fact that he's entangled in performing karma kanda, but that he's entangled in sin, and he's going to suffer for it. So I think there's a mix of things going on there.
In what case, following dharmic or virtuousness leads to culminates in bhakti, in what case it ends up going degrading and going into demoniac?
Well, especially in the modern age, where are you going to find, as Prabhupada says it often, where are you going to find the qualified Brahmins to say and it's if you're enwrapped in that, there's a high probability that you're going to get entangled in sinful activity, to really perform it properly. And that's why in this age, it's not necessary nor recommended. Again and again, whenever there's a question of sacrifice, Prabhupada always comes back to the point, to this sacrifice of the man, it's Sankirtan Yajna. That's the proper sacrifice. There's no harm, nobody's, there's no animal killing, nothing like that. It's all very wholesome and auspicious. And anyone can take part. You don't need to train Brahmins and all these things, just come and chant Hare Krishna, even if you can't pronounce properly, Krishna will see your Baba Gravi Janardhan. So that's the, why we have this verse. Hare Nama eva kevalam kalau nasteva gataranyata. In this age, the only process for getting to the gati, the final goal, is Harinama, Sankirtan. There's no other way, including in Karma Kanda. What does Krishna say in the second chapter? You've been coming, Yamimam pushpidam vacham pravadam javipashtadaha. Those who are not really wise but think they are, say that there's nothing else but those flowery words in the Karma Kanda section, and that the whole goal is, increasing your bhoga and your aishwarya in the heavenly planets. But then he says, bhoga aishwarya prasaktanam taya pradita cetana. If you're too attached to material enjoyment and opulence and bewildered by those things, you can't really get the determination to practice devotional service. And I would say that in the modern age, it's not that you won't get the determination. You won't get determined, but it won't even be an issue. It won't even be a possibility, because you're too much involved in getting and spending and involvement of taking up bhakti. In other words, that verse says that you can't get the strong determination which seems to imply that you're trying, but you're not really determined because you're too attached to Bhoga and Aishwarya. But in the modern age, people are so much involved in the immediate gratification and getting the money for it, that if you approach them, it's very rare that they'll take a book. If they take it, will they read it? In other words, that it's too much in the motives of passion and ignorance. So I would say that the processes outlined in the Karma Kanda are very rarely practiced properly in this age, and it's really not necessary in this particular Kali Yuga, especially with Lord Chaitanya's movement so prominent, and he being here just a few centuries ago. So that's what we should practice and preach, and everything will be given. You'll be satisfied. Yogakshema Bahamyaham. Your necessities will be there if you just practice bhakti, and your security, and live simply, and you can actually achieve the highest happiness, way beyond anything in heaven, so-called heaven. That's really what this movement is about. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your attention. Jai Jai. Oh.